good evening to you, our esteemed viewers. Welcome back from News at 8. This is the Family Hour, empowering families one episode at a time. Today is our Thursday edition. We are discussing something very, very interesting. Edrine, Osteen, Mukalazi is my name, of course. The team is already busy putting things together to see that you have the best of this program. Days back, when we had a topic on inclusion, people demanded for more topics that are talking about gender inclusion or gender inclusiveness. Now, here we are today. We are talking about another topic, interesting topic. I'm excited. Last time I almost had the bad side of Dianah. So today I want to be so careful. But I'm excited that we are going to talk about empowering women in leadership and how important this is. Dianah, you're most welcome.
Thank you, Edrine.
Good evening.
Good evening to you. Good evening to you viewers. It's always good to be here.
Yeah. Like I said, I want to be so careful when I'm talking about women.
You're giving the impression to the viewers that I am very passionate and will beat anyone that doesn't speak about women, which is not true. I'm passionate about women empowerment, but I'm passionate about vulnerable people and marginalized people also being empowered. But mostly women, that's true.
You said it, much as you are running away from it, but you said it. We're looking at empowering women in leadership, and I believe that much as we have it in Uganda, where they want to give women a priority in some institutions, we are lucky that we have the Vice President, the Prime Minister, the First Deputy Prime Minister, Second Deputy Prime Minister, the Speaker, all are ladies. And we believe the President has really done something to show the world that women too can when you trust them with leadership. But we want to look at their empowerment and why it is important to empower them in leadership, because even as they're given these platforms, there is still a mindset people have over women. They'll not do this. Let us see. Any mistake they do, they are judged.
More strictly.
Strictly and rudely, as if they are not supposed to err in any way. But we shall look at all those as we get into today's discussion. But let us look at, maybe we start with the advantages of having a gender, or having gender diversity in an institution as a leader. How is that important?
Wow, those are so many introduction points. I wanted to jump in right in a couple of them there.
It's okay. It's okay. We can start it from there.
My national ID might be withdrawn if I give my opinion on certain appointments. But just to start from where you have kicked us off on, why it's important to have a gender inclusion.
Yes.
I've said this and I'll say it again. Women have a sixth sense that men don't have.
Mm-hmm.
They have an intuition that separates them from the pack. They have the ability to see things in a way that men would not see things. So if you have women into your board or into your leadership dynamic, you are more likely to catch a blind side. You are more likely to find intuition-based thinking, intuition-based results. Because women will show you a side of you that you cannot experience. And that for me is what sets women apart from the pack. The second thing is the ability to nurture. Now, it's not saying that men cannot nurture. It comes easier to women to nurture by virtue of their makeup, by virtue of their designation that God gave them, by virtue of the fact that they are feminine. That sets them apart. And if you want anything to grow, you will need nurturing. If you want anything to be distinguished, to increase, to multiply, you will need a woman. Same as they say, they give the woman a seed and they give them a child. You give a woman a house, she'll give you a home. You give her ingredients, she'll give you a meal. Ordinarily, there are things about a woman walking in intrinsic capacity that cause her to increase whatever is put in her hand. And so that's what we always look for when we say a woman nurtures. And so when you have that on the board or the leadership, you are allowing a sense of nurturing to take place over the team and over your prospects and goals. It's not to say, and something they usually catch women on, it's not to say that when you go to work, you're supposed to be a mother. That's not your job. You have a job description and you're supposed to work according to that job description. It doesn't take away from you that you're a woman and that there are certain things that come easy to you. So how you use that nurturing instinct inside you to bring about the results that someone couldn't. I think that you will get along, especially if you're an older woman, you're going to get along so well with the younger people than other people, than men would get along with them. You're going to get along, perhaps, hopefully, with the cleaners and these other people than men would. You will catch the fact that the cleaner is not well today while the man may not. You will catch the fact that the cleaner has children who are not in school and something's happening while a man may not. And I'm not saying some men cannot. I'm just saying it's something that's intrinsically special to women. And so when they bring that into the leadership capacity or into your team, you have retention of a team because people feel cared for, people feel looked at, people feel that they are being seen, and everybody wants to be seen. The other aspect, which is arguable, I've had people say this, but women are brighter than men. Let's just say that. More intellectual than men. You can debate it across the board, but I still think that there's a grain of truth to it. That women have a sense of intellectualism or capacity and maybe wisdom. Let's take it from there.
Isn't it just
More
a mindset?
No, it's not. I want you to look around. Look around. If I say your peers, you'll be offended. But you look for people below you or above you. Yeah, and see. Oh, let's say it this way. People say that women tend to mature faster than men do. So it means our ability to think is not the same way than men think. The men at my age bracket do not think the way that I think. The men at a 25-year-old girl does not think the same way as a 25-year-old boy. That's why they say she has more wisdom or intellectual capacity or something like that. I think what they really mean is the ability to mature faster than her colleague will. So it baffles me when women marry younger. I always think, what are you looking for? But that's a topic for another day. Hopefully we don't get into it. But that for you brings a sense of maturity, intellectualism, wisdom onto the team. And then as a leader, you need that. You need to be able to have that dynamic on the group. Because while a girl of 25-year-old is looking to settle down, a 25-year-old boy is not looking to settle down. He's looking for the next big thing. This girl is a more steady bet in terms of your continuity of business if you fulfill her basic needs compared to the boy who's looking for the next big thing. So that's the dynamic that you have. If you're looking for a business that's steady and it depends on what level of growth you are on, sometimes it's better to hire the women because they bring that dynamic. While Edrine is looking to run away for the next big thing, somebody else is looking to settle down. And she's wondering, will this work for me as a mother? Will this work for me as a wife? Will this fulfill my career goals? It takes a while for us to make up our minds to move on to the next thing. And so rather than training teams over and over again, you need to know that you will find that in women.
Okay. I know there are very many tables that are being shaken, even as
I enjoy shaking tables.
You've already done it. You've already done it. So you've given us why the advantages that women have over men. But then the question is, why is it that even with this beauty, the world will always judge women negatively? I'll give you an example. The president of the Republic of Tanzania, she comes in after the death of the president, Magufuli. But even then, anything she does was, Rakuba Mukazi, if I can put it like that. If Magufuli was, he wouldn't have done this. So you realize that even up to now, people still look at women as a marginalized group, a special group that needs to be sympathized with. Why is it like that?
Culture. I think the thing that everyone is going to grapple with is culture. It's funny that US would rather have a black president than have a female president.
Mm-hmm.
They chose a black president over a female president.
Right.
They were not ready for a female president, but they were much more ready for a black president. For me,
as long as
it was not a woman, and that's how deep people feel about women in leadership. In fact, when I was campaigning for the post of President General of Society, I walked into a particular office, and a man said, "A woman does not lead. It's judgment upon the earth." And he said, "Here is my Bible, open it for me and show me where a woman is meant to lead." That's the gravity we have to deal with when we step up in leadership. I know for a fact that people have left churches because women have risen to the top of certain Anglican churches. Men walked up and said, "I do not believe we are still in the will of God." And they walked out of those churches. And you definitely know the women-led churches right now. And so that's the gravity we have to deal with as women. I know as I had a clergy also making a joke the other day, which was true. I know it to be true. Someone says, "I cannot be given Holy Communion by a pregnant priest who's a woman." Or even if you've heard Reverend Dianah's story, she could not be priested because she was pregnant as a woman. That is the dynamic that women have to deal with on a daily basis. Whether you rise in leadership or whether you are the least of the least. I always tell women it's better to walk into the storm and face the storm than turn away and shy away and just choose comfort over beating down these stereotypes, beating down this culture, beating down people's interpretation of the Bible. I think it's actually, we do ourselves a disservice when we shrink back. Everybody has labored to try and demystify the idea that women can lead, women should be in leadership, whether it's a biblical concept. I did a podcast recently where we were talking about women in leadership, and I got a couple of messages backlash from the men who began to interpret the Bible in a certain way. But I said, read it plainly as it is. Paul acknowledged Phoebe as a deacon. He acknowledged women as his fellow workers. He gave them credit for what it was worth. These are the things that he says he has written about. Look at the history of the place before you begin to make the decision. Now, there are many scholars across the earth who have given different interpretations of what it was supposed to be. But I think if we're honest, religion has beaten us down as women into that place. Religion, which is perhaps the oldest thing, across the board, biblical or not biblical, put women in such a way that they are secondary citizens to anything else. Sometimes even secondary to animals. You would be shocked. That's how bad it can become. So you have the basis of faith from whatever dynamic that has pushed women to that, perhaps because of the writings of certain people in those different books, or because of the cultures that they have formed, or because most of our cultures of faith are based in the Middle East, and what they practice has been carried on, to the other things. The other, of course, is culture. All our cultures, even before we talk about faith entering, women were always secondary citizens. And so you would see that as we grew up, women weren't allowed to eat chicken, not allowed to eat eggs, not allowed to eat, the meat and everything. Some people still carry that on, right? Some people still carry that on across the board, and women say, "I'm allergic to chicken, I'm allergic to eggs, I'm allergic to this." Having not tried sometimes it's just a cultural thing where they say, "I don't like." They were taught as younger people, that they didn't like them. So it's something that they did. So then also the culture where women said that if he beats me, he loves me. And so they took domestic violence to mean love. And so you have women who will stay in homes or will stay in places and be battered, be abused, be cheated on, all these things, because the culture has told them this is acceptable and this is your place. The culture has also told women that men can marry as many women as they can, but a woman cannot. And so whether you are a believer or not, a man will say, no, I mean, we are men, it's acceptable for a man. But no, it's a culture that is absolutely contrary to the Bible, and it needs to be dealt with, whether we like it or not. I think the other, which is really a recent thing, and has been just a rise in things, is people's idea of women empowerment. The more women have tried to be empowered, the more they have been beaten down. It's weird, but it's actually, you saw the movement of the Black Lives Matter. As a movement always starts, there's what you call adulteration of that movement. So people who have different interests begin to play into these particular things. And so with the rise of the women movement, if you talk about feminism, the very beginning, and the people begin to define feminism in different ways. So you have the militaristic feminists, you have the Karma feminists, you have so many different people. But the rise of it at the very beginning was equity versus equality. You know, women were saying, we are not less. We actually are equal. Now that's a debate that we can have across. But you see, the more women rise in these movements and men support them, the more there is a rise to beat down on these movements. And so you have such a struggle that is happening and is causing more chaos. So it now falls to the family and the home. How are you raising your boys and girls to view the world? Because the government is not going to give you an answer to what you're looking for. They can set in place the policies and systems and appointments to people, to women to a certain level. But what you're dealing with is something where people learn it from childhood, learn it from birth. All of us know that color is not seen as a child, as someone is growing up. It's taught to people to feel that we're about black, about brown, about every other color, white. It's the same way we teach people. When we teach your sons different, you're teaching them to look down on women. When you treat them different and you say, I'm raising a man, he doesn't work at home, he doesn't clean the fridge, he doesn't clean the house, he doesn't cook, what are you really raising? And I say this to parents, it's an indictment to us as a generation that's raising the next generation, that the buck does not stop with the leadership of the government. It stops with us as heads of families. What are we doing different to make the world a better place for women that are coming after us?
Okay. Actually, when you talked about culture, you reminded me, sometime back the Archbishop said, Archbishop Kazimba, that Uganda is ready for a female bishop. And then someone prominent in this country said, God take me today so that I don't see that happen. And I was like, okay. So this is how fight is. But how can we... how can this unconscious bias be minimized to promote gender equality?
That's a really difficult question. Why? Because it doesn't have one particular answer. It requires everybody working together. The truth about it is that it starts with a family and how you're raising a family. How are you raising your sons to view women? How does your husband view women? You can't raise him, but there are things about him that you can influence. How are you raising the people within your home to view the way women are valued, the way women are handled, what women can be entrusted with and what men can be entrusted with? Now, I'm not saying that everybody should be on the equal footing. I mean, God in his different designed women to do certain things and men to do certain things. And we acknowledge that design, that the man is the head of his wife, and by virtue extension to other things. Now, it's not about a woman being on top of a man. I acknowledge the Bible. I acknowledge and I agree with the Bible that there has to be a structure of leadership which is followed. It's the way that Christ is the head of the church, and we go down the rank, and then the fivefold over the church, and we keep going down the rank. Now, this is not a discussion on structure. It's a discussion on emotions. It's this discussion on emotional intelligence, on how you view and value other human beings. Do you think of your house help as less than you? Do you think of the man begging on the street as less than you? Do you think of the madman as less than you? If you teach your children to view the house help as less, don't be surprised when they view women generally as less as they grow up. Because in their mind, they have been told to view women as less. And that's a difficult balance that parents have to deal with in this season. How do you treat them with respect, but still give them, but still allow them to do the work that they came to do? So how a family dynamic works is important in helping deal with the bias. Also, the government has to come in, because policies and structures and laws are set by government. And so government putting laws and policies in place, such as women being appointed to particular places of leadership, women being given the actual mandate to do this and being treated with respect as they do it, women being also recognized that there are certain things women cannot do because perhaps the time of the month, or they're coming to menopause, or because women struggle with so many dynamics compared to men. Recognizing that the hurdles in front of women are so much more. Carrying a child for 9 months while you're working is not the same as you who walks into work. It's not the same, regardless of whether she says the pregnancy is not turbulent or not. It's different. She's begging another human being, and that's a lot to deal with. So how do you deal with her as she goes through that process to nurture and bring life into the world? How do you treat her when that child is dependent solely on her to survive for the first couple of months? Though putting policies into place matters. How you treat mothers, how you treat women who have lost children while they were pregnant, how you treat them when they are going through their different parties of life. Sometimes women have to fall back because they're going to take care of ailing parents. Sometimes women have to go away for a while and do extra education, and she's left behind so much. How do you deal with that dynamic? How do you give her security after she's gone for maternity leave and come back into work? Is she sure that she'll have security of her job or not? And so government comes into play an important role, because they have to set in place laws and policies to ensure that both the public and private sector are ensuring that women's rights are taken care of. You are ensuring that women are rising to their capacity. You are ensuring that women are going further than they would have gone before. So you set the laws, you guard those laws, and you punish anyone that does not follow those laws. The other one is how the community also responds. The community responds to this particular place, because children grow in a community. I was talking to someone yesterday. I say I call all my close friends, parents, mommy. As long as I go home, I call them mommy and daddy, because to me, they are still a parent figure in my home. It doesn't take away from the fact that my parents exist. It just shows the respect and honor which I hold them. So you are raised by a community. You're not raised by a single person. The things I don't have the ability to learn at home, I'll learn from being in other people's homes. I will learn what a functional family looks like. I'll learn what it means to love your siblings and walk with them. I'll learn these different things that I would never have been able to learn. And so a community has a way within which it raises the society. And so we have to be intentional about the way we are influencing communities. Be very intentional by talking to them, by doing things with them, by empowering women in those communities. Give women an opportunity to lead those communities, whether it's in terms of security, whether it's in terms of lifting up the community, whether it's in terms of promoting different things like social welfare, education, health, and those different things. Those things are important. I always tell people, I know a woman is in charge when I walk into a place many times. If I walk into a place many times and I see that there's something different, a painting has been added, a vase has been added, something has been added, there's a woman that's in charge. I guarantee you. But if, for example, I walk into a place year after year after year, the place is not changing. The things don't look as good as they ought to do. A man is in charge. And I say that not out of bias, but because over time, I've walked into places and noticed it a lot. I've noticed it. I walked into a place recently and I said, I've been here for years, but you still look the same. I can guarantee you a man is in charge. And I'm not saying it out of bias. There is something that women do. They never leave something the same. They love to increase. And so it's important that if you give the community an opportunity to let women influence those different dynamics, you will change the community for the betterment.
Okay. Wow, because of that, we are taking a short commercial break. I know very many people are now checking to see what is wrong with their places of work, their houses, and what. So, of course, you have the answer. We are taking a short commercial break. We shall come back later. Welcome back from the commercial break. This is Family Hour, empowering families one episode at a time. We all exist because there is a woman who carried a pregnancy for 9 months. At least we should appreciate that, and we know that the fact that she went through whatever she went through to raise you, then they can even do more than what the world thinks they can do. We are looking at women in leadership and how they can be empowered. Before the break, there is something that had come in. Then, of course, I'd said that when she walks into a place once, twice, thrice, and again, that is when she will know whether there is a woman in leadership or the other gender. Of course, by the way things happen, and now I know this is something that takes us all. You look at your workplace, and then you're like, maybe this happens because it is because this gender is in control. But anyway, treat that information the way you want. I put a disclaimer. Then, what can leaders do to develop and nurture female talents within their organizations?
They need to create a culture of belonging, especially for women. Because if you show women that they are accepted and they can rise to leadership, and that there's no barrier being put in front of them, regardless of what stage they are in life, and regardless of what they face, then you are more likely going to have many women retained in that place, but also growing to a level that is that allows them to bring the best of themselves. So as a leader, you have to create a culture of belonging for women. Allow them to come into the place to feel that that they are safe, that they are secure, that they have job security, that their self-esteem is valued, that their talent is not diminished. All these things are helpful in ensuring that women actually are able to be a part. The other one is to allow women to be themselves and to use the best of themselves and their experience. Because many times when women come into the place, they're going to bring a different dynamic. Like the example you have given, women will organize the place without being told to organize the place. Let me say this. I walked into a workplace which had existed for quite some time, and we had the men's toilets and the women's toilets. I came from a place where in women's toilets there are extra things that are needed for us to function as women. And so after being there for some time, I asked, but there are extra things missing in this bathroom that are a necessity for a woman. And there were women in that place, but there was only one woman who was a shadow of the partners that were there. So there was not really a woman per se in leadership. And nobody had voiced it. Now, because nobody had voiced it, the men never thought about it. So it was never within the budget. It was never within something. Until I said, guys, there's something missing in a women's bathroom that has to be present for women for us to function. And so I talked to people. In a week's time, it was there. Now, it's not because the men did not think it was necessary, but there was no woman in the place of leadership to make that call and to say something is amiss. And so, having come from a different sector where I've been to enough women bathrooms and I know what's needed, I was able to say that. So, what I'm saying is that when you allow women to express themselves in their best way with their different dynamics, always have, as a leader, especially if you're a man, have a woman on the table, at the table. Give her a seat at the table and tell her to and ask her about the feminine things that will be needed. Ask her to bring to the table things that the women will most likely need. And if you do that, you're going to have women feel that they belong. The other is to build a diverse board, which I have already intimated on. You cannot have a board that is fully man. And I know that many people see that as it's about competence. It's about those who are striving to get a seat. It's about those who have worked hard for it. But women work hard too. It may not look like it, especially because of the things that they have to do, but they work hard. I can tell you without fear of contradiction that if you have women on those boards, you're going to have a better perspective of things that you would not have for a sin. Similar to what I said to the entity, the farm that I was in, I had to say, there's something missing in the toilet that should be there for women. It takes a woman being present for you to be able to recognize certain things. And so having to build a board that's diverse is important because they will be your blind side. I mean, statistics also show how women have come onto boards. And because of the recent increase in the number of women advocating for people to be on boards, there's been such an increase, maybe about 40% increase of women being on boards than they have been before in the past. And now not just being on boards, but leading the boards. That says something about us as a culture, as we have come so far. But it took women having their own thing, their own organization, their own board, creating a board that was their own for people to see that women are actually valued. And so it's why you see when people set aside particular programs, the first thing people ask, especially when they see a panel, is where's the woman? Sometimes the way they hide behind it is by making the moderator a woman and the four other people, panelists, as gentlemen. But you have women equally competent as this men. And so I'm not asking you to put women because they're women or because of their gender. I'm saying look for a competence in these women that causes them to rise to that same level. Put people of equal competence, if not more, on the same board and see what they can do. The other, which we've spoken about, is to introduce what you call an inclusive nature in when you're onboarding people. Look for a big diversity of women coming through. And that doesn't mean you deal away with competence. It just means that if you are alive to the fact that there may be a bias. And so take into consideration that when you're hiring, they're more likely than not, give women a chance to compete, give men a chance to compete, give the disabled a chance to compete, give everyone that's marginalized. But having women, giving them a chance to compete is for me a greater advantage than closing the door completely. Like you once spoke about where some people advertise and say women and especially encouraged to apply, because people will shy away. Men apply for a job even when they don't have the list of they don't meet the criteria. Women will look at it and simply say, I do not meet the criteria, and so never apply. A man doesn't think about that. He's going to look at it and say, I want this job, and so he will put his best foot forward. I once had an example that got my attention. It's how women use their best competences. A woman was working hard, and she'd come and she was working with a couple of men, and the man and the CEO was the CEO was a man, right? And so after the finish a meeting, 4 of the men would walk into the CEO's office and joke about the football game that had played the night before. For her, she went to her desk to work and she was slaving off. And she was so annoyed because the men were wasting time, the men were goofing off with the boss, and yet she wondered why the men were getting promotions over her. Because she had not learned to play the politics, of the office. The men were forming a bond. It was sort of like a bond forming ceremony. Every time, you're done with the meeting, the men are forming a bond with the CEO right after, talking about football. You may have children to talk about, but you can find something about something that you like or something that's interested in the both, and find a way that also works. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in that same format, but it's something that you can learn to do. You need to learn. Someone needs to learn from your male counterparts. If you watch something like that, how can you find something that's more or less in the same angle? It may not necessarily be the same thing. If you don't like football, I'm not asking you to like it. But I'm asking you to find something that can also forge a bond between you and the CEO, so that he sees you beyond a workhorse and sees you as a person. And so that's important. The other, which is a bit controversial, is to fit the job to the candidate instead of the candidate to the job. Mm-hmm. Because many times we have a criteria and it says JD. So this is what you're supposed to fit. This is your model. You're supposed to fit have this number of papers, achieve this level of education, have this years of experience, and etc. But even in your onboarding process, you can interview people and like a candidate that's a woman because she's good and you see has a good fit in terms of culture, rather than making the job description and saying she does not meet it. You can actually fine tune it to meet her, so that she's able to come onto the process. It's a better way of getting people that will enable you have retention. So it's important that you're fitting the job description to the person when you find that one person, as opposed to just saying this is the way we work. So if you found a good candidate that's nursing a baby, right? How then do you make it comfortable for her to still give you the best of her ability without her losing herself? So that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. How do you find a woman that's dealing with probably nursing ailing parents that says, I can work, but I'm going to work out of office? How do you to fine-tune the job to suit that person? And so if you find a candidate that you like, don't pass them over because you're so strict on your job description. You fine-tune that job description to meet the woman. Then I think lastly, to generate public relations and exposure to women, as much as possible, you need to have a PR strategy that sells towards women. And I must commend, Uganda has done well in that. You see a lot of banks, perhaps because women are now leading the banking section, but you see a lot of banks with women at the forefront, doing a lot of income generating activities, going towards women who have small circles, women with small businesses, SMEs. You're going towards the telecom sector. You see a lot of PR towards the women. A lot of it. Well, there's a thin line about beauty and also women. I know that, but I think that it's good PR and exposure, so that they are calling more women into that sector than they ordinarily would have.
Okay. Now, talking about what you've just said, we'll look at vulnerability of women, especially in getting jobs. Yeah. Of course, we've had very many people say, of course, the bosses will ask for favors before you're recruited, or a lot of things. But don't you think that sometimes the women give in willingly because they realize they need this and sure they should do whatever it takes to get to get to this particular platform? Because we've also had reports of promotion after the favors. So someone will promote you because you've probably offered in something or what, and the difference between men and women is that a man will give in cash, a woman will give in their body. Don't you think that sometimes the women also show that they are so vulnerable that they can do whatever they ask them. That we have a few women who can really stand by their feet and say, no, this is below my dignity and my womanhood.
It comes down to personality. If your personality and value system tells you that this is the way to move ahead, then you're going to give it. I don't necessarily think it's about vulnerability. Well, I recognize that a bit of it is, especially for those who are coming into the market.
Yeah.
I've heard of quite a number of young lawyers who have had to stay over in the workplace because the boss has said, stay over, we're working late on a particular file, or has driven up country with this young lawyer to go and work on a file up country and then booked one room because they're up country, or booked a room for the client, a new one, then himself, or maybe the lawyer who some places have penthouses, and so when they're working and you're working late, let's go up to the penthouse and work a bit late. Now that's what you call the vulnerable place, an abuse of power by especially males who are in power. That's an absolute abuse of power. And so that level of vulnerability has to be recognized. And we can come up with strategies what can deal with it, especially if you have people who are also your peers. And this for me calls for the men who are at the same level of entry with this lady. Protect her as much as possible from that predator or that perpetrator, because at the end of the day, this could be your daughter, this could be your sister, and you don't want that to happen to her. And I think, I just hazard a guess, 3 out of 5 women have faced that level coming into the workplace. I'm not immune to it, and I'm sure not many women are immune to it. We've faced that where the papers have been held and we have not been able to move to the next place because the man held our papers. I know what that feels like, having gone through it. We know what it means to be at the workplace and men tap you in ways that they should not tap you, and deny it, and especially people in power, and deny it. And having been through it, I understand it more than most people do. And so it's such a high percentage. And women by nature are vulnerable to this. You would think that it happens only to younger people, but the higher you go, the worse it also becomes. Because I have seen that it happened to me even as I grew older in the profession. There were so many people who did things that I didn't expect of them. It gets worse when this person is actually your friend and you trust them, because they begin to abuse that friendship and overstep bounds that they never should have. And so they touch you inappropriately, they come into your room at a function inappropriately, they force you to do things, and then you wonder, when did our friendship cross to a level where you thought it was okay for you to do that? And for me, I think it's an indictment, especially on everybody that's involved. I think that if you know that your fellow partner is doing this, or boss or employer or CEO is known for doing this to the people, do what it takes to ensure that you're protecting the younger people. Do everything it takes. If it means you, when they ask the person to stay, you also stay over, stay over. If it means finding a way to put yourself in the room, please put yourself in the room. And ladies, if it means not locking the door when they're calling you into a room, don't lock that door. Do what it takes. There's no bulletproof, and I'm hoping that associations and different people can come up with mechanisms such as reporting these incidents so that people can be got. All that to say, there's still a level of vulnerability by the mere fact that we are women. It's harder for us to walk on the street in the night than it is for a man to walk on the street in the night. It will always be harder for us because the loss to us is much more than it will ever be for a man. For those that give out willingly, it's a value system. It's a value system, but more than a value system, sometimes it's just a cycle of abuse that has happened over time. And so because of this cycle of abuse, you keep going at it because that's how you know how to get things. People told you that when you were younger, you need to do this to get something. And so You'll find more times than not, the first time it actually happened may not have been consensual. But after that, you feel that there is nothing to protect, and so it becomes a culture for you. And so I can't just generalize it, but I'd have to look at the start. And I can tell you for certain that it's a small percentage of people that are willing to say, I will give out willingly. Most people, it's either cycle of abuse that started that was not curbed, or it's a level of vulnerability, or it's just the culture in a place and people find themselves swept up with this culture. And so it's important that each of us, man, woman, employer, leader, junior, cleaner, all these people are working to ensure that you protect people as much as possible. Let people rise on merit. Let people rise because of their capacity to deliver. Don't allow it to be anything else besides that.
What are your parting shots as we draw closer to this discussion?
Women empowerment. I think that's a discussion that we have had and we can have for time immemorial. But I will say it is the role of every man, every woman, everyone in authority to ensure that a woman is empowered, because that woman could be your mother, your sister, your aunt, could be anyone that you are related to. And so when we begin to look at people with a lineage or in a close facet where we think this is my sister, this is my mother, this is my aunt, we are willing to empower them as much as possible. It's our role to protect them. It's our role to lift them up. It's our role to create a better working space than we have had before.
Wow, thank you so much, Dianah, and thank you so much, our viewer. We're looking at empowering women in leadership. Of course, sometimes we just need to stand in the feet of the women. So look at her as your sister, look at her as your mother, look at her as your daughter, and then the treatment you offer unto her. Would it be really pleasant if it was given to your sister or your daughter or your mother? Then I believe with that we shall have a better world for all of us, because we were all created by God and we are all created in God's own image. You and I are God's own image. Thank you so much for watching today's episode of the Family Hour. Tomorrow is a Friday. Yeah, parenting with Claire Bwenje. I sign out. I've worked with Jonah, Ja, Linda, Dina, Mohumuza, and Brinko Ategeka. God bless you. Meet again Monday.